At this point, we are faced with the danger of having the origins of our history and culture completely erased, doomed to a historical dark age. This is why there must be renewed emphasis on the Hwandangogi. Hwandangogi starts with the first Samsonggi by Anhamro of Shilla and the second Samsonggi by Hwandangogi from late Goryeo. Some say that Hwandangogi is Wanchonsuk, mentor to Yibangwan, who later became Taejong, third king of Joseon. The Samsonggi is followed by Donggun Segi, the 2,000-year history of Donggun Joseon by Master Yi Am. His great-grandson, Yi Make, who was the editor in the royal archive during the reign of Junjong, the 11th king of Joseon, had access to many secret records, which he filed and organized. He merged them with records he found while he was exiled to Kwesan to produce the Taebek Ilsa, which is made up of 8 books and is the last and final part of Hwandangogi. The 8 books include the Samsin Oje Bongi, about the creation of humankind and not just the Korean nation, Hwanguk Bongi, the history of Hwanguk, Samhangwangyong Bongi, about the 3 realms of Donggun, Sodo Gyeongjeon Bonhun, a classic containing the ancient religious texts, Cheongbuk-yeong and Samul Shingo, and also explains the culture of the 3 dynasties. Then, Goguryeo Gukbongi, Daejin Gukbongi, Goryeo Gukbongi, 8 books in all. At the center of accomplishments of the Go-song-yi is Master Sojan. He is the one who left us with secret guidelines for restoring our rightful history and organized the teachings about our history, culture, and spirituality. There were also 3 great men who were instrumental in restoring our history and culture: Master Yi Am, Bum-jang, and Yi Myung. These 3 men became students of Master Sojan and swore to heaven and earth that they would resurrect the true history of the nation. Later, a year after Korea's annexation by Japan, one of the 3 great scholars of the Jola region, named Yi Gi, edited all of these books as part of his independence activities. His favorite disciple, Gye Yeon-soo, combined the 5 books together into the full Hwandangogi, a history of this nation of cosmic radiance. Hwandangogi is a record about how the Korean nation and human civilization experienced the light of heaven, earth, and the universe. The Hwandangogi is a record that must be carefully read and understood, starting from the very first pages. This is not something easily done. It is only possible when we are fully immersed in the historical perspective that is based on the culture of cosmic radiance. Hwandangogi did not come out of nothing. The key figure in all this is Master Yi Am of the Goseong Yi clan, and who can rightfully be called the godfather of historical restoration. His grandfather was the scholar Yi Janbi, who gave this advice to King Chong-ryol. This country was strong since the time of Hwanguk, Baedal, and Joseon, and North Buyo and Goguryeo. Our founder Wanggan called himself emperor and used a reign title. Then he said, "Serving the big country has become the main state doctrine, yet no one thinks it shameful. We are sure to be ridiculed in the future." It is teaching like this, a perspective based on cosmic radiance, the Hwandan spirit, that made its way from the grandfather to father, then into the mind of Yi Am. Thus it made him climb Mount Mani when he was just 10. Who shall light the new torch for the darkness in this eastern land? I will now seek peace and salvation for the entire world. This is the poem he recited as he made the pledge to heaven and earth, looking down upon the land from Shamsongdan. Now I move on to my second point. that Jongdosanim was an empire ruled by sons of heaven of the east. Jongdosanim lasted 2,096 years and was ruled by 47 rulers or Donguns. Before Joseon was the Baidal Empire of Hwandangogi. The name Baidal had the meaning of bright land and was ruled from Shinchi. Baidal had a history of 1,565 years and was ruled by 18 Hwandangs. Shinchi was the capital of Baidal early on, but the capital was moved to a place called Cheonggu by the time of the 14th Hwandang, Jiaoji, also known as Chiwu. The history of Baidal can be divided into the Shinchi and Cheonggu periods, and before Baidal there was Hwanguk, a confederation of 12 countries from the east of the Tian Shan Range to the right side of Lake Baikal, a civilization where people were free from disease, lived long, and had a history of 3,301 years ruled by 7 Hwandangs. The years of the three dynasties together comes to 6,960 years, or 40 years short of 7,000. And these 7,000 years were erased. The history of our origins, the golden age of Korea and humanity, gone completely. Old Joseon, as far as textbooks around the world are concerned, is a myth that should not be believed. This is truly a sad and depressing time that we are living in. Let's talk about who Hwangom, the first Dangun, really was. The first impression anyone gets when he or she opens the first pages of the Dangun Segi by Master Yeom, which is included in the Hwandangogi, is how detailed it is. It has so much detail that it seems a bit unbelievable. For example, the part on Dangun Hwangom says, Dangun Hwangom was born on the 2nd of May on Shinmyo year, the 1528th year since the first Ge Chonjo, when Emperor Hwanwung founded Baidal at Shinchi near Mount Baekdu. Hwangom first governed a large town at 14. How was Hwangom at 14 be able to rule as junior ruler? This is actually the critical part that reveals to us the nature of Dangun Hwangom's ability to govern and as well as his divinity. I'd say absolutely critical. In the Hwandangogi, it is said, a country is a place with one mountain and one river. Any place that included a mountain was a country. It is what historians would call a chiefdom, or a city-state. A Hwangom was actually a title for the ruler of these chiefdoms or city-states, meaning there were hundreds or even thousands of Hwangoms across the empire. Then one day, a great man emerged from the east. He was referred to as Hwangom the Divine. And what kind of man would be called divine? A divine Hwangom was someone who attained enlightenment by following the Baidal Empire's spiritual discipline of universal and cosmic radiance. It was because he was enlightened and attained a high level of spirituality that all the people of neighboring countries heard of his divinity and requested his teachings and asked that they be allowed to become his people. And when Divine Hwangom was 38, the king of Danguk from the Bear clan died in the field while fighting against his enemies in pitched battle. Then Hwangom, at 38, rose to the throne as he was respected by the people. It was Mujin year 2333 BCE. Hwangom did not establish a dynasty with force. Hwangom's benevolent kingship stems from the principle of three, the law of creation through which the high God created the universe. The philosophy was also the foundation of the Samsin culture of the Singyo period, which is the defining feature of the very first human civilization. But he is being besmirched right now, being treated like some prehistoric tribal chief ruling over a primitive society, covered in clothes made from tree leaves. The title of Dangun means a high priest, who presides over rites and ceremonies to heaven for the community. A Hwangom is a political ruler, who governs a realm with boundaries, a king who rules over a territory. The term Dangun itself, however, is rooted in the ancient word Denguri, which means God or the Lord of Heaven. The word also shows up in Sumer, which is widely considered the origin of both Western civilization and Christianity. People of Hwandangogi began crossing Tian Shan around 8,000 years ago, but the biggest wave was about 6,000 years ago. And God, or Tenguri, is rendered as Dingir in the Sumerian language. In Mongolian, Dengri became Tengri, which also means the heavens or God. All of this leads us to the true meaning of Dangun. Dangun is someone imbued with the divine character of God, the holiness of the Lord of Heaven. That's what it means. Dangun Wanggam ruled his country according to the principle of three, the fundamental law of universal creation. This led to the system of three realms. The empire was divided into three parts. Manchuria became Jinhan, later Jongdosanim, with the capital at Asadal, or present Harbin. The Korean peninsula became Mahan, with the capital at Bagagang, or Pyongyang. What is now Liaoxi became Bunhan. Its capital was Andukyong, or Tongshan, which was destroyed by an earthquake in 1976. This is what is known in history as Samhan, with its three capitals, or Samgyang. As for Shilla, it had 5 capitals. The Samsin is the creator, and the universe is given a structure of space and time, directions of east, west, north, south, then the 4 seasons, and the great middle. The Oj, 5 divine emperors, preside over the directions and seasons. When the Samsin and Oj is translated into cosmic theory, they become Samsin and Ohang, or 5 movements. The Ohayang are not the 5 elements of nature. They are definitely not water, wood, fire, earth, and metal. They are the 5 sacred spirits of the cosmos. That is why in the Hwandangogi, the character te, or great, is attached to each element. For example, great water, great fire, great wood, great earth, and great metal. 5 movements are an outgrowth of the cosmic philosophy of Shinryo, our ancient religion. In explaining the history of human creation, the Hwandangogi says that the so-called 5 movements that were known to history is actually the 5 sacred spirits. Therefore, it was the philosophy of the Samsin Oj and the 5 sacred spirits that led to division of the country into 3 realms and 5 capitals. It was during the reign of Dalman, the 6th Dangun, when the text called the Seohyosa was written and then read out to the heavens. Also known as Shinjibisa, this text was taken by Taoists of China and scholars elsewhere, who turned it into an abstract esoteric prophecy. Let us take a look at just what kind of text the Seohyosa is.
This is the Seohyosa, the epic verses that sing of history and cultural spirit of Korea. The Samsin descends in radiance to this land, where the morning light is first received. Hwanin first establishes the law of Samsin and bestows a grace deep and vast. A divine assembly communed and dispatched Hwanung with the mandate from the Hwanin and founded the first nation of the East. Hwanung Chiwu rose up at Cheonggu, his martial valor revered for eons. Lands between the Hwai and Mount Tai submitted to Chiwu, whom none under heaven dared assail. Dangun Wanggam received the heavenly mandate, and the sounds of joy resounded through the 9 Hwan. The people were as joyous as fish in water. His virtue renewed people like wind caressing grasses. Bitterness and resentment Wanggam resolved first, and he cured the ills of the ailing. He was of one mind, and acted in benevolence and piety, and filled the world with radiance. Jinhan pacified the country within, and the laws of governance renewed. Mohan guards the left side of empire, while Bonhan safeguards the south. though jagged rocks are on all sides. The Holy Sovereign enters the new capital. Each of the capitals are the balance beam, the weight, and the pan. The pan is Begagan. The balance beam is Somila. And the weight is Andokyan. The head and tail, evenly balanced, and the vitality of Samson has been well preserved. The realm prospered and enjoys great peace, and 70 states come and pay homage. The founding spirit of the three Hans must forever be preserved if the kingship is to succeed and flourish. Speak not of the rise and fall of the country, but rather serve the Samson Sangje with diligence utmost.
The Sohyosa is liturgy and prayer for heavenly rituals to serve the Samson Sangjanim, the presider of the universe and a god that the Korean nation has served for over 9,000 years. This is so that the empire would be governed properly, in accordance with the cosmic philosophy of the Samsin that is part of our original culture and Singyo tradition. Again, it is liturgy and prayer for everlasting prosperity and peace. As we can see from the map, Dangun Joseon was governed in accordance with the cosmic philosophy of the Samsin. The three capitals were compared to the beam, weight, and plate of a scale. The weight is the most sensitive part of the scale. When the weights are moved, balance points shift as well. And it was the weight portion of the scale, the kingdom of Bernhan, located in Liaosi, that reacted most visibly to changes in the political situation. The one place that the Chinese must pass when invading Northeast Asia is Andokyan, the Mahan capital. On the other hand, the plate of the scale remained at Pyongyang throughout its history. The main dynasty, Jinhan, started out with its capital at present Harbin, then moved to Baigaksan, and finally to Jongdosanim. We remember Harbin as the place where Ito Hirobumi, who attempted to erase the history of Korea, died after taking 3 bullets from the patriot Anjung-gun. It is the same Harbin as the Dangun Joseon capital, the beam portion of the scale. When the 3 capitals, which symbolize the spirit of the Samson, are in balance, the empire enjoys great prosperity. However, when they are out of balance, the entire nation is placed in jeopardy. The Seohyosa, a mantra and liturgy, whose purpose is to remind everyone of this fact, lest anyone becomes indifferent to its importance. The rough version of the Seohyosa survives in the biography of Kim Weejae from Goryeosa, and it is also given mention in the Seongho Sasol by the scholar Yi Ik from late Joseon dynasty. Now, we will move on to the major accomplishments of Danguns of the ancient Joseon dynasty. Upon taking the throne at 38, the founder, Hwangum, thought long and hard about how to realize the spiritual discipline of Hangik Ingan, the humanitarian philosophy of cosmic radiance that he inherited from Hwanguk and Badal in the actual lives of his people. He created the 8 laws for the purpose, and he also ordered that the Chamsongdan altar in Marisan in Ganghwa be built. And when Chinese kingdoms were about to collapse as a result of the 9-year flood, he taught the Crown Prince Buru the 5 movements law for water control, and dispatched the prince to China. This allowed Yu to create the kingdom of Xia that came after Yao and Shun. The Crown Prince Buru, son of Hwangum, became the second Dangun of Joseon. The armies of Gwanggaeto the Great, who were just as brave and fierce as the armies of Alexander of Macedon, sang a song called Ilaga when they were marching. It was Dangun Buru who was both the writer and the composer of Iyawaga. They sang the song, including the passage,
Oa, Oa.
"Every one of us should remember the graces of the Baidal Empire for 100,000 years." And they also sang of giving their proper respect to the great ancestor gods. It was after Buru's reign that a custom called Ailpjugari, which is not unlike Thanksgiving, also started, where people would gather up the first grains harvested and put them in a jar, to be placed in a designated spot in the house. The tradition is rooted in the foundation of Joseon by Buru's father, who was a Hongik Ingan, a man of universal cosmic radiance. There is a character that describes such a man, John, the combination of man and complete. Therefore, as I have already said, John means a perfect person, someone who has become the man of universal cosmic radiance. The way of such a man is called Jongge, instructions for proper living, which helps people become divine persons of universal cosmic radiance. It becomes the ultimate purpose in life. Let us all say it out loud.
Jongge Wiop, Jongge Wiop.
This is the most potent, the singular, and ultimate purpose in life for each and every Korean. Making enlightenment the greatest purpose in life seems to have been part of national custom. This led to creation of our festive culture, marked by festivals where everyone came together as one. In addition, this also created the Opshin, spirits of destiny culture, through heavenly rituals of thanksgiving. After Buru came Garuk, the third Dangun of Joseon. He summoned the head priest, or Samrang, who represents the origin of the Hwarang, and told him about the way of God, kings, teachers, and instructors, Sin, Wang, Jong, and John. The letter Jong is the same Jong in the Daejongyo religion. Aside from that, what does Jian mean? John means a perfect human being. Here's something truly remarkable. He had Samrang Ulburuk create the Gerimto script, the precursor to the Hangul, that was based on principles of the cosmos and made up of 38 letters. However, we will talk about this in more detail later. For now, I will tell you about the Xiongnu. The tribe's original name was actually Hun, but the Chinese hated them so much that they vilified them with the name Xiongnu, which is pronounced Yongno in Korean, which means ruthless and savage slaves. There was once a man named Sakjong who was banished to Yaksu. He was pardoned and was made a ruler there, and he became the ancestor of the Hun. Also, he ordered the publication of Baidal Yugi, or History of Baidal. The fourth Dangun was named Osagu. Dangun Osagu had a younger brother named Osadal, whom he appointed as Han, Khan, of Mongolia, or Mongolia. The first king and founder of Mongolia from 4,100 years ago actually appears in the pages of our history. It's truly fascinating history. Of course, this has the naysayers and detractors screaming, saying it's unbelievable, that Hwandangogi is fake and absurd. They say it is not even worth finding out unless it can first be confirmed as true. Moving on, the king of Mahan around this time was Guanwuji, and the Guilsan in Changchun, where he ruled, was taken south to Hwanghae in North Korea and became the present Guilsan. The three sages, Hwanin, Hwanung, Dangun, are being worshipped there in Samsongsa. Gul, the fifth Dangun, traveled to Jangdangyang and built the Samsindan, the altar to the Samsin, and also planted Hwanhwa blossoms. Hwanhwa is the flower that symbolizes this nation. There was debate as to whether the Hwanhwa were chrysanthemums or azaleas, but was confirmed as the Mugunghwa, our present national flower. The sixth Dangun, Dalmun, governed the empire through the cosmic philosophy of the Samsin. He pledged to govern wisely, as he held rights to Samsin, the creator. So what is this philosophy, this way, that served as the foundation for the prosperity of the Eastern realm? What was its secret? Let me remind you that there aren't many dynasties in human history that lasted for over 2,000 years. They say the Roman Empire had a 2,000-year history, and so did Egypt. But their histories were not unbroken like Joseon and Baidal. Even Shilla had an unbroken history of 1,000 years. Then, during the reign of the 11th Dangun, Dohae, the Daishijan, Hall of Great Beginning, was built. Dangun Dohae vowed to restore the history and the spirit of the Great East, and that is why he used the name the Great Beginning. He then declared a big tree to be the body of Hwanung and brought back the tradition of Wongsang. Daishijan thus came to be called Hwanongjan, or the Hall of Hwanung, but had its name changed to Daiwangjan because that is what Buddhist clergy began to call them after Buddhism was introduced to Korea. Dangun Dohae thus rejuvenated the ancient tradition of worship, tradition of the founders of Baidal and Hwanguk. He also completed a canon based on the Chombugyong and teachings about the Samshin passed down from Hwanguk and Baidal. Teachings such as the Samulshingo that include the description of the heavenly palace of the Samsin, the world, and humanity in 366 letters, referred to as the So-ui Gyeongjeon of Hwanguk and Baidal. This is also called the Yeongpyomun, or the spirit marker. The promulgation of the spirit marker is an event, a truly historical event that we can ill afford not to understand. It is also recorded that Dangun Dohae is the one who provided principles and guidelines for proper governance to the Xia dynasty of China. During the reign of Heldal, the 13th Dangun, there was an incident where Jie, the last king of Xia, broke his pact with Joseon. Heldal sent troops to aid the Shang in attacking Jie and helped establish the Shang dynasty. Also, the Sodo were built everywhere. Chanjiwa was planted around them. Young men went around with that flower on their heads and were called Hwarang. Hwarang literally means young men who wear flowers. The 13th Dangun Heldal also organized a massive revival of heavenly rituals in Sodos. Priests who worshipped Samshin, the creator, meaning men presiding over rituals at Sodos, were called Samrang. And remember, we have a Samrang song right here in Ganghwa Island on Marisan. Joseon trained its young men as Samrang or Gukjarang, ordained by the heavens as a national symbol. That is why young men like the Samrang were called Hwarang long after that, because of the flower that they were wearing. Hwarang actually came from Chonji Hwarang. The Dangun Segi, which is in the Hwandangogi, is the only record that teaches us the facts behind the origin of the Hwarang. During the reign of the 15th Dangun Daeum, taxes were reduced to 1/80th of income. His brother Daeshin became lord of southern Songbi, origin of the Songbi tribe and Joseon's literati culture. The 16th Dangun, Wina, offered rights to Samshin Sangjenim at Yeonggotap. This is where the Yeonggoje, drum rite, a festival that was part of celestial rites of Buyo, comes from. This was a celestial ritual and festival for inviting Samsin the creator to earth, and was part of tradition long before Wangam. It was also a ceremony for communal unity, but there aren't many people that know this. They refuse to accept it as tradition and simply criticize. The naysayers continue to claim that the name Yeonggotap only came into existence during the late Qing and use it as evidence to prove Hwandangogi as a fabrication, just because the word Yeonggotap appears in the Hwandangogi. They are trying to straitjacket everything within their framework of colonial history. And in order to justify it, they are smearing everything that does not fit the framework as illogical fabrication.
The 16th, Dangun Wina created the tradition of rituals for the worship of Hwani, Hwanong, and Chiwu alongside Dangun Wangam, 4 of them together in a single ceremony. When the people gathered around, it is said they recited and sang the Chonbugyeong.
During the reign of Sotai, the 21st Dangun of Joseon, King Xiaoyi of Shang paid tribute. In fact, Chinese dynasties paid tribute to and exchanged missions with Dangun Joseon throughout the Xia, Shang, and Zhou. Such examples of cultural exchange and tribute are recorded in many places inside the pages of the Dangun Segi. There is also a record about King Wuding of Shang, who raised an army and conquered Guifang. He was, however, crushed by Dangun Sotai and his army, and was forced to pay tribute again, the record says. The reign of 22nd Dangun, Saikbulu, represents the beginning of the second dynasty of Joseon. His capital was at Baekaksan Asadal, and his dynasty lasted 860 years. Saikbulu moved the capital from Asadal to Baekaksan and changed the Samhan system to Samjoseon. Then he created the 8 prohibitions, which show up in Chinese records in several places. Only 3 of 8 are known, but Saikbulu was still the first to establish a system of written laws for administration. After taking the throne, the 23rd Dangun Ahol made his younger brother Gobulga ruler of the Nakrang, Lelang region. Nakrang actually has a long presence in Korean history. 5,400 years ago, Taiho Boki, Fuxi, the sage ruler, passed Nakrang and Jin, Chen, on his way to founding his kingdom in Shandong, according to the Taebagilsa in the Hwandangogi. During the reign of the 25th Dangun Solna, the Shang fell to the Zhou. King Zhu of Shang was vanquished. Kings Wen and Wu, father and son, founded the Zhou with the help of Jiang Ziya, who was Dongyi. Gija fled the Shang and came to Sowa and lived as a recluse. The Gija Joseon in the Chinese histories is utterly false. The record of Dangun Solna clearly proves that Gija never came anywhere near the Korean peninsula. Amazingly, during the reign of Dumil, the 27th Dangun of Joseon, a number of former countries of Hwanguk, including Sumali, Yangon, and Gudachan, still existed. Not only that, they actually sent envoys and paid tribute to us. The record from the reign of Gamel, the 33rd Dangun, states that Samsongsa was built outside the west gate of Yonggotap. During the reign of Sabal, the 35th Dangun, a general named Onpabulhap was sent across the sea to Wungsup, Kumaso in Kyushu, to conquer the area. Then a very important event, the appearance of the first king of Japan, occurred when Marek ruled as the 36th Dangun. The Marquis of Hyopya, Baebanmyeong, was dispatched against the enemies of the sea. He crossed the sea on the 38th year of Marek's reign and conquered what is now Kyushu, Honshu, and Shikoku. There was once a rebellion by Soshimori, chief of Wuduguk, in early Joseon during the reign of 3rd Dangun Gayuk. Dangun Garuk dispatched an army, defeated Soshimori, and beheaded him. Among Soshimori's descendants was a figure named Baebanmyeong, who supposedly went to Japan and became King Jinmu, the founder of Japan. This is what the records say. The Japanese, realizing that Wuduguk existed near present Chuncheon, are still making the pilgrimage to Wudusan. They are still come to Chuncheon to worship their ancestors. At the end of the reign of Moli, the 43rd Dangun, a man named Wu Hwachung rebelled. Then Gumul, the governor of Baekman Fortress, honored the will of heaven by raising an army, then marched and occupied Jangdanggyong. Gumul destroyed the rebels, held a right to heaven on the 16th of the 3rd month, and became Dangun at the new capital of Jangdanggyong. He basically changed dynasties.
That is because central government had collapsed, and military power was divided between Mal Joseon of the Korean peninsula
Jongdosan of Manchuria and Jongdosan of Liaoxi. The name of the country was changed to Daibuyo, and this represents the beginning of the state of Buyo.
Remember the part in the Samguk Yusa where it says Dangun Wanggom lived for 1,908 years? This does not mean a lifespan of 1,908 years. It means it was 1,908 years from the 1st to the 43rd Dangun. The 188 years from the 44th Dangun to the 47th Dangun would be called the Daebuyo period. But the overall system of threes, as in the Samson, was still maintained, as can be seen in merely changing the name from Samon to Samjoseon. That is why the 188 years of Daebuyo is counted into the history of Joseon. Also, Gumul organized the Samson Yongoje and held the 3-6 Grand Rite. During the reign of Boul, the 46th Dangun, a man named Gihu entered the Byeonjoseon palace and declared himself king of Byeonjoseon. He asked the Dangun's approval, which was given. The Gi clan would produce 6 successive kings of Byeonjoseon. Gihu became the 70th king, followed by Giwook, Gisuk, Giyun, Gibi, and lastly, Gijun. These 6 kings, whom we assume are descendants of Gija, still does not justify the existence of Gija Joseon. It's ridiculous. How can we call the entire dynasty as belonging to Gija just because a few of his descendants became kings in one part of Joseon? Goyolga was the last and 47th Dangun. He built a shrine to Dangun Wanggom at Baegaksan and assigned priests to hold rites each season. Then on 238 BCE, he realized that he was no longer able to govern the empire, and he gave the reins of government over to the heads of the 5 clans. He declared that he was stepping down and left to be a hermit in the mountains. The 5 clans ruled by council for 6 years. However, just 1 year before Goyolga stepped down on 239 BCE, a man named Hemosu established another country at Wungshimsan and called it Bukbuyo. It was on 232 BCE that Bukbuyo officially replaced Dangun Joseon and formally began its history as the legitimate successor to the dynasty of the Danguns. As for the cultural achievements of Dangun Joseon, the first of these achievements is the philosophy that encompasses unique perspectives on history, humanity, God, and universe, all organized into a system of thought based on the way of cosmic brilliance and Hongik Ingan. This is the Mansai Hongbom, or the Grand Plan for Eternal Generations, an organized guideline for proper living. Thus, the Mansai Hongbom represents the very beginning of the system of law in the history of human civilization. To put it simply, from it came the 8 articles of early Joseon, the 8 prohibitions of Sekbulu, and the 9 pledges of Gumul, the 44th Dangun, which is a law made up of 9 vows. The second is a calendar used during Dangun Joseon, but originally from Betel and Hwanguk. The year in the present calendar is 365 and a quarter days. The idea is already present in the Samul Shingo, written by the first Hwanung, using 366 letters. The calendar was created by Master Jabu, who was the teacher for the 14th Hwanung, the great Chiwu. He turned the idea into an organized calendar, the Chilhwai Je Shin Ryuk, or the 7 gods ritual calendar. The 7 gods include the god of the sun, moon, water, and fire, and they are worshipped together. The 7-day system can also be found in Sumer, considered the origin of Christianity, and the entire Western civilization was, in fact, influenced by Hwanguk and Betel. Sumer actually had 7-day weeks, just like the calendar that we use today. Master Jabu, who made the calendar, had brilliant descendants such as Changiso, who created the 5 movements law for water control. Dangun Wanggom sent Buru to teach the Chinese about water control and the Huangdi Zhongjing, when China was on the verge of collapse from the devastating floods. It was this cosmic system of calendars that allowed Joseon to rescue Yao and Shun from the devastating 9 7-year flood. During the reign of the Solna, the 25th Dangun, the Shang dynasty fell to the Zhou. When the Zhou was just being established, Gija instructed King Wu, son of King Wen, on the Hwandangogi, or the Grand Plan in 9 categories. This Grand Plan became the basic rule of governance in the Zhou dynasty, 9 key rules for administering and governing a country. Hwandangogi is a famous word, as the Korean word for category, or bomju, comes from it. Third, one of the greatest cultural achievements in human history took place in Dangun Joseon. The creation of the 38 letters of the Garimto, the ancient precursor of Hangul, inspired by cosmic principles. Both the annals of King Sejong and the records of Joseon dynasty and Jong Inji's foreword to the explanations and examples of the Hunmin Jong says the Hunmin Jong was modeled after an ancient script. Let us compare the 38 letters of the Garimto script and the 28 letters of the Hunmin Jong made by Sejong. They are nearly identical. The principle upon which the Hunmin Jong Hangul, was created is the philosophy of the Samsin Oje. It is commonly known as the principle of 3 gods and 5 movements, which represents the principle of cosmic creation spoken of in the Hwandangogi. The Samsin is the Great Spirit and Creator. He gave birth to, raised, and governs all things. That makes the Samsin the spirit of creation, edification, and governance. Samsin is the true God, a true incarnation of the living Creator, whom we can see, unite with, and engage in communion with. Heaven, earth, and humanity. All of this is in the Chonbugyeong, the heavenly marker, first philosophical canon of humanity. Garimto is a script created in accordance with the laws of cosmic creation in the Chonbugyeong. Looking at the Hunmin Jong the Area signifies heaven. It is a symbol of harmony. It looks like a simple round spot, but the holiness of the vast universe, everlasting character of life, and the infinite time and space around us is being expressed by this single dot. The we have the Yi, which represents humanity, and the that stands for Mother Earth. Heaven, earth, and humanity, symbolizing the Samsin, inspired all 11 vowels in Hangul. The number 11 has unique significance. It shows up as Iltaguk Sipmuguk, expressed in the Sibul Songdo, which contains all of the Samjai. Hangul received praise from many renowned scholars around the world. Jeffrey Sampson said, Hangul must rank as one of the great intellectual achievements of humankind. Jared Diamond, author of Guns, Germs, and Steel, described Hangul as an ultra-rational system. Werner Sasse, professor emeritus at Hanyang University, called Hangul the best alphabet in the world, which deftly combines traditional philosophy and science. Before we move on, let us take a look at Chonbugyeong, the first among religious canons in the history of humanity. It also has the distinction of being a cosmic canon. Let's take 30 seconds to read it together.
1 is the beginning. From nothingness begins 1. 1 divides into the 3 ultimates, yet remains an inexhaustible source. Arising from 1, heaven is 1. Arising from 1, earth is 2. Arising from 1, humanity is 3. 1 accumulates and climaxes at 10, as 3 governs the change of all things. We should recite it every day. For the sake of our 9,000-year history, recite it 3 to 5 times daily. You should put it on a card and carry it around. 1 is the beginning. From nothingness begins 1. This is the middle portion. Based on 2, heaven changes under 3. Based on 2, earth changes under 3. Then the lower portion. 1 proliferates in mysterious ways, evolving in perpetual cycles. The Chonbugyeong is being explained by dividing it into 3 parts. It explains the origin of Dangun Joseon, its history, and also the history of enlightenment.
It speaks the truth about humanity and universe and defines it in simple terms, using the numbers from 1 to 10. Asking questions like, what is the meaning of life for people? And why were humans born human? There are also questions like, why does the universe exist? What is the ultimate purpose of the universe, of history? Jongdosanim explains the truth about humanity, the universe, God, and history through math and natural numbers. This means the Chonbugyeong is cosmic scripture, the canon of cosmic mathematics. We can say with confidence that it is the first of all human classics that teaches us about true enlightenment.
Now we will find out about the role Dangun Joseon had in establishing the earliest Chinese dynasty.
The first Dangun of Joseon, Hwangom, took the throne at the age of 38. Yao, fourth descendant of the Yellow Emperor, the historical ancestor of the Chinese, became king in China a bit before Hwangom became Dangun. Yao knew full well that his ancestor, the Yellow Emperor, fought against Chiwu, the son of heaven of the Eastern Empire, and submitted to him after being defeated. Because of this, was determined to establish an independent kingship, completely separate from the Eastern Empire. He was a sage king, but an enormously willful one. He killed Ji, who was his half-brother, and anyone who dared oppose him in this endeavor. All of China was drenched in blood as a result. King Yao was succeeded by King Shun, who is recorded in the Shujing, Book of History, as visiting the Eastern realm. This event is described in the phrase, Dong Sun Mangjil Sagun Donghu. The original phrase is longer. King Shun toured the East and performed his rites to the mountains and fields, and sought audience with vassals of East. But people are translating it wrong. They say, right after King Shun took the throne, King Shun looked around the eastern part of his kingdom. The gyun in the record is the one in Gunshin, and the phrase actually means a person in a lower position paying a visit to his lord.
Therefore, the translation of Sa Gun Dong Hu should be paying a visit to the Lord of the East, and not a vassal. The letter Hyun means to seek an audience. It means he went east to seek an audience with the Son of Heaven, who just happened to be Dangun Hwangom. This is the real meaning of the phrase.
King Yao had sons, and the eldest was named Danju. Danju supported a peaceful union of Northeast Asians. He actually thought that peoples of the East, Joseon, and West, China, were one, because they had the same origins. It's not what his father wanted. King Yao would not allow his own son to succeed him, and gave the throne to King Shun. Danju disappeared from history, completely forgotten, with no shortage of regret and grievance. But there was one tribe who rose up, demanding Prince Danju be restored to the throne, believing that Danju was the true prince who would bring peace to Northeast Asia. The tribe who rebelled were called the Samyo. They appear in the first pages of the Mahan chapter of the History of the Realms of Samhan, which says the Miojok, Miao, were one of the 9 tribes of Hwangok that appeared at the very dawn of human civilization 9,000 years ago. It's a fascinating story. A look at the Miojok culture reveals that it is actually all true. If you go to a Mio village, they hang ornaments on their roofs that resemble the battle helmet of Chiwu and dance in circles. They are still performing fascinating rituals that originated in the culture of cosmic brilliance. This is the culture of ancient Hwanguk. And look what the Mio women are wearing. It is as if they are showing us they are also heirs of the people who worship and revere the Samson. They are wearing headdresses with 3 flowers arranged in a pattern symbolizing the Samson as they pray and make wishes. I have just told you that China was in dire straits, but this was the turning point.
in the establishment of the first Chinese dynasty, the Xia, by King Yu. Northeast Asia was swept by the Great Flood in Zhongsa year, which is the 50th year of the reign of Wanggom, the first Dangun. That is why he built the Chamseongdan in Ganghwa and presided over a celestial rite. 17 years after this, the 9-year flood, an event we talked about just before, happened and devastated the Chinese landscape. In the West, there was a flood long before this, during the time of Noah, which lasted for 40 days and nights. During that flood, humanity was supposedly wiped out, except Noah and his family, including his 3 sons Ham, Japheth, and Shem. However, humanity was not exterminated by that flood. Most were very much alive and well. They were alive and well before that flood, and they were alive and well as that flood was happening. Father of Yu was an official serving King Shun, in charge of controlling the waters. He failed in his duties and was exiled to Yushan, where he died most tragically. Yu succeeded his father as waterworks engineer. It is said that Yu took his duty so seriously that he actually passed by his own house 3 times during his tenure, but did not stop by even once to see his family. It was exactly then, when Yu trying to get the floods under control, that Crown Prince Buru was sent by his father as an emissary. He would instruct Yu on water control. Yu met the savior from the east in Langya, in present Shandong. Let us take a look at where it is. The place is very clean and well maintained. It overlooks the Yellow Sea, which is called the East Sea in China. There is a Langya-Tai pavilion on top of the hill. Of course, the place was not called Langya at first. It got its name from Nangya, one of the princes of Chidunam, a descendant of Chiwu who was appointed by Wanggom as the king of Byeonhan. The town was originally called Gahan Fortress. They built another town over it, which became Nangya Castle. Nangya, or Langya in Chinese, was firmly established as the name of the town, and there are still place names like Langya-Tai, Langya Castle, in China. The fact is, we know who it was named after. And the Taibike Ilsa in the Hwandangogi is the only historical record that shows us what happened. If that's not awesome, I don't know what is. After the Xia dynasty fell, it was replaced by the Shang dynasty, also known as Yin. The Shang was a dynasty of the Dongyi people, descended from the jade makers of Hongshan culture. It was a dynasty that was established by our ancestors from Dangun Joseon. Even the so-called oracle bone scripts are the products of our Eastern civilization. Let us go back to the time of Huldal. There was an able minister who helped King Tang establish the Shang dynasty. His name was Yi Yun, known as the ancestor of all cooks in China. It was instruction from someone that enabled Yi Yun to play a vital role in Shang Foundation. Yi Yun had a teacher named Yuija, or Master Yui, the author of Yeonpyeolmun, which is the ultimate form of the idea of cosmic brilliance and Hongik Ingan. Master Yui was also the teacher of Dohae, the 11th Dangun, who proclaimed the Yeonpyeolmun. Yet perhaps the most important philosophy given to us by Master Yui is contained in the statement, "The origin of the way lay with the Samson," meaning that the principle of cosmic creation, the way itself, comes not from the heavens, but the Samson. Like I've just said, it was our Dongyi ancestors from Baidal and Dangun Joseon that dominated early Chinese history and culture. The Dongyi heritage in China includes such figures as the Yellow Emperor, Soho, Jeonwook, Jaegok, in addition to Yao and Shun and all the kings of Xia, Shang, and Zhou. Last but not least, Confucius himself was Dongyi, being the descendant of Mija of Song, who was also Dongyi. The same goes for Mencius and Laozi. Again, the Hwandangogi is the only book that reveals Laozi's origins. There is also Tanzi, one of Confucius's teachers. Confucius went to Tanzi to learn from him, and he learned from Tanzi that in the East, names of birds were used to create titles for officials in government. Many Chinese scholars have produced records saying that founders and kings of Chinese dynasties, along with sages and heroes from Chinese history, were all of Dongyi origin.
So what does Dongyi exactly mean? It translates as great archers of the East. Yi means great bow. And what is Yi again? It carries the meaning of root or origin. This signifies the origin of Eastern civilization lay with the Dongyi. This is an admission by the Chinese of their actual historical roots. If I have to pick out the most fascinating figure from Dongyi history, is King So-on, who received tribute from 36 kingdoms, who ruled lands just south of Shandong. His story begins when Ahol, the 23rd Dangun, conquered the area between Mount Tai and the Huai River, established the So Kingdom, and assigned the Yonggo clan to rule over it. When speaking of the Dongyi, we usually say there were 9 divisions called Guhuan in Hwanguk. In Beidel, they were called the Guhuang, or the 9 imperial tribes. In Dangun Joseon, they became the Guyi, or 9 Yi. It simply means there were 9 branches of Dongyi. Seoyi was one of the 9 Yi, and King So-on was their king. A very powerful king by all accounts, whose rule was founded upon the culture of cosmic brilliance. However, he made war on the Zhou without the permission of Joseon's Dangun. King Mu of Zhou rode to the battlefield and produced a sign, a marker symbolizing Dangun. All of King So-on's vassals, who were Guyi, were surprised and turned against King So-on. Everyone was surprised, and King Mu took advantage and cut off So-on's head. This incident was not well received by later chroniclers, who said King Mu's actions were very unbecoming of a learned gentleman. Founding histories of Chinese dynasties and significant events in Chinese history show us one thing: that Dangun Joseon was the source of their legitimacy, that kings of China could only become legitimate by submitting to the mandate provided by the Danguns. Lastly, the dynasty that succeeded Dangun Joseon, along with Beidal and Hwanguk, was North Buyo. The fall of Dangun Joseon did not involve all 3 parts of Joseon collapsing at the same time. According to the Hwandangogi, the first dynasty lasted from Wangam until Sotai, the 21st Dangun. The second dynasty was from the Sekbalu, 22nd Dangun, to Muli, the 43rd Dangun. The details, including where the capitals were, the names of Danguns, and their accomplishments, also their interaction with China and Japan, and the nomadic world. It also records the end of Joseon with Goryolga, the 47th and last Dangun, along with the end of Bonhan, the left wing of Joseon, when King Gijin was overthrown by Weeman. According to the records, each of the 3 Joseons fell at different times. The main Jin Joseon ended when Goryolga renounced his throne. Baeon Joseon fell 44 years later when Gijin was driven from his capital by Weeman. While Weeman was invading, a certain rich man from Naknang-san named Choi Sung gathered his assets, came to Pyongyang, and established the kingdom of Naknang. This is the same Naknang of Princess of Naknang. But later historians actually confused this Naknang with a commandery set up by the Han dynasty of China. The claims of a Chinese commandery, a colony that existed in the northern part of the Korean peninsula, is still being parroted today. Let us go back a bit. A coup d'etat led to a civil war during the reign of the 46th Dangun, Iboul. The throne was lost until it was restored by Goryolga, who became Dangun. He gave up the throne, and Dangun Joseon was ruled by council for 6 years. This is when Haemosu, a warrior from Gorygup in West Apnot, and established a new dynasty north of Daibuyo. Since it was north of Buyo, he called it North or Bukbuyo. This is how Buk or North Buyo replaced Daebuyo. The first Dangun, Wangjeom, had 4 sons. The name of the youngest son happened to be Buyo. Dangun Wanggom made his 4th son Lord Buyo, in an area southwest of present-day Harbin. This is where the history of Buyo begins. The word Buyo means glorious or bright. In the history of Buyo, there were 7 different states with the name. First, there was Bukbuyo, or North Buyeo.
Then, at the time of the invasion by Wudi of Han, Gawuru, the fourth Dangun, tried to give the throne to his younger brother, Heburu, who never got the chance. He was driven out, forced to a place called Gasyopwon, and this became Gasyopwon Buyeo, or Dong, East Buyo, because it was in the east. Again, at this time, Emperor Wu of Han wanted to conquer the entire Northeast Asia and become emperor and the only son of heaven in the region. This is when a certain King Dongmyong suddenly emerged. The academia is telling you King Dongmyong is Jumong, but King Dongmyong is actually Godumak, who defeated the Han army of Wudi and took the throne as the fifth Dangun of North Buyo. Heburu, the legitimate king, was thrown out. He founded East Buyo. His son is Ganghwa, who had a son named Daeso, the third king, but Daeso lost his life to a Goguryeo general, Goyu. East Buyo collapsed after his death. After the death of Daeso, his younger brother and a cousin established their respective Buyo kingdoms, the Galsa Buyo and Yeonabu Buyo. Yeonabu Buyo then moved to a place called Zhengzhou, north of present Beijing. In the Hwandangogi is a record of what happened to its last king, Huira, and his son, Prince Wiryo, who either went to Japan directly or passed through Baekje on his way. He would become King Yongxin, Ojin. This record is slightly problematic and does not match the known chronology. Anyhow, the Hwandangogi contains the overall picture of the history of Buyo, which includes the histories of North Buyo, East Buyo, and West Buyo, Yeonabu Buyo. In addition, when King Song, the 26th ruler of Baekje, moved the capital from Gongju to Buyo, renamed his kingdom Nambuyo, or South Buyo. So we have Buyos in all the directions, east, west, north, and south. Then there is Yung Buyo, which is a term that means the center of Buyo, which is also part of Buyo history.